This is Jeremy Block, if you can read his name tag. And this is Ethan. Okay, thanks, Ethan. So both graduates from Ithaca. Jeremy graduated a couple years ago. Ethan graduated, oh, look at that, this year. Jeremy's now in grad school in Florida.
Yep, down here at the University of Florida. It's fabulous.
And he's doing some really cool things. And then Ethan is freelancing with...
Yeah, not doing cool things.
Not doing cool things. If you're on my field trip this weekend, Ethan and Nick will be there on Thursday. And we're going to have some drinking games, FYI.
Ooh. Get ready. Oh, I keep hitting the screen, trying to resize this window. Okay. So was that our introduction?
That is my introduction of who you are, and then you can go into what you're actually doing.
Okay. So we're talking about UX design.
I think she was talking about introductions there, Ethan.
Oh, what?
What are you working on now? Like currently, what are you doing?
Currently? I am doing UX design in some part, which is cool. And also doing a little bit of web development, which is very related to that. Yeah.
And I'm doing research into an area called analytic provenance. Think about when you open up your editor, for example, since we're working with a whole bunch of people here at the Post. When you open your editor, sometimes it's you're either, if it's an old project that you're coming to years later, you'd like to know kind of when you made certain editing decisions. So what I work on is trying to visualize how you get to certain points in your process. So how do we transmit or communicate the process to other editors, other people? And it goes beyond just doing video editing. We talk about visualizing graphs and networks and all sorts of other visualization aids. So we're doing research around that area. So things about how do we display that narrative in a really concise way for people all over the place. And so it's a little different than all the narratives that we make with video, but it's research. So. Go ahead, Ethan, let's get started.
Cool. Sorry, I may or may not cut out a couple times, but we're going to see how this works. Cool. So we are talking about designing interfaces today, which is kind of similar to some stuff that you guys might be familiar with. But you're definitely familiar with working with interfaces because you do that probably every day. You probably just don't think about it too much because the people who made them have done a good job, mostly. Sometimes they don't, and that's usually when you notice it, and that's kind of like the sensation where you get really frustrated with like a program or something like that. So we're going to talk about how to be good UX designers today. Cool. So we're going to take a look at the difference between the designs in some programs that you guys may or may not be familiar with. So I'm sure all of you have either used iMovie or Premiere at some point, and you're familiar with sort of the interface. I think most of us probably use Premiere more often than iMovie, unless you're Jeremy, who doesn't have a CC of subscription. But there's some key differences there. So let's take a look at iMovie first.
So yeah, so iMovie is definitely built a little bit more for an amateur audience. We're looking at casual users who are not super familiar with all the extra additions that you can really fine tune. So you're getting very limited access to some of these levels of control. The appeal of the design is very open, and there's a lot more space around different things. And for the most part, there's not a huge learning curve. People are able to pick up what they're doing pretty quickly. There's a timeline at the bottom. There's your source material in the top left, and then there's a program monitor on the right. And other than that, it's it's drag and drop and off you go. All of the presets come as they are. There's very limited structure that you can actually change about things. So this is a design intentionally made. The choices were made to simplify this environment as much as possible so that it was accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, so that's contrasting something like Premiere, which is a little bit more for professionals. So the interface design of Premiere is not going to be as luscious and smooth and nice as iMovie, but you're going to have a lot more control. You're going to have a lot more customization, and you're going to have a lot more power. And that's because that's who they were designing for. So when you're using Premiere, this doesn't look amazing. It's definitely one of the better looking, programs, but professional grade programs tend to just not look that great, because the people who use them care more about being able to set them up exactly as they want them to. They want them to function. They don't really care, how intuitive it is and how easy it is to look at and figure out what you need to do.
That's my uncle.
Oh yeah, it is.
So I saw in the chat that Rachel is interested in UXD and stuff along those lines. I think that this may be a really key slide if she's interested in grabbing a screenshot of it. But this is more or less a general idea of the timeline for people who are interested in doing UX design. There are a number of different stages. This is a small subset of the early part of like processing and generating the ideas. But you'll start with a series of steps. Obviously, you need to do some user research. You need to know who you're pulling research from, and get an idea of, can you get a focus group together and ask them to answer a series of questions and have them give you a day in the life scenario and describe something of value. Things of this nature, say you're developing an app for choosing food on campus. And if you were to be choosing food on campus, you'd want to go to the students and figure out what the students want. But you may also want to go to the faculty, and you may want to ask the faculty what they would want in this app. And by going to them and asking them a day in the life, how do they know what's on the menu? How do they know when things are going to be open? Things of that nature are all going to be really, really important. And the only way you're going to get that kind of information is by talking to people and doing interviews and surveys and things like that. And so this is really good to get some generative ideas of where stuff is going. And that's just step one. From that, you start to make some summative evaluations. You look at the data you've captured and you draw out these personas. We'll be going over personas in a little bit more detail, but the general idea is that this persona is a representation of all the research you've done. This is a made-up figure, someone that doesn't exist, but represents all of the people that you've interviewed. Something like your key users, your optimal people that you're working with and for. And then from those personas, you'll build storyboards. And for us who are in post-production, I think storyboards are pretty familiar. It's this idea of this is the sequence of events or the scenario that they may experience. And so from the user research, the person, the character, the development of a character, and the storyboard, you get this general idea of what the user needs. And what's most important, because almost always UX is done in a team, you can communicate that with everybody. Everybody can share the same understanding of what's going on with everything. And from that, you can start to prototype. And that's more or less what we're going to end up talking about today is the prototyping process of we want to lay out all of our stuff, which is called information architecture. Where does a button go versus a menu versus things of that nature? And as you're doing this information architecture, you're going to probably start with a wireframe or just some boxes to represent layout. And then you might iterate on that and go to a low fidelity prototype and then a high fidelity prototype. Low fidelity and high fidelity, the difference there is usually that low fidelity is a digital version and a high fidelity is a digital version with colors and pictures and everything else already figured out. So wireframing can be done on scratch paper. Oftentimes there are some programs that actually emphasize it looking really rough, and you'll get better feedback from users if you give them a really rough looking thing, because they'll be like, oh, this is definitely not finished, so I can give them a lot more feedback about what's working and what's not working there. Which is a really interesting element of this entire process, is that since it is an iterative process and you need to have the user involved in the process, it's important to not make everything look super polished until you're sure that you have a finished design. So this is that element of iteration where you're going back and forth from prototyping to user testing. You might ask people to take a look at the interface that you've given them and have them think aloud, think about what are the things that they've said, what are the things that they notice about the interface, how do they use the interface, what are their thought process as they touch on different buttons. And this could be a piece of paper or paper prototype where you've written out all the different elements, and you say, when you press here, you take that paper away and you put a new paper in front of them and say, this is what the screen that you'll see now. And so you do this kind of iterative testing to see what's working and what's not working for different applications.
Yeah, and usually prototyping and wireframing is kind of where people that might be a little bit more in the art world, graphic design world, that's kind of how they can get into UX design. So all this like research and personas and stuff might sound a little abstract from like the stuff that you're interested in, but that's really a lot of the groundwork that builds up to making a design, because it's expensive to do all that. So you need to make sure you have research and data to make your design choices have reason behind them. Cool. Anything else on the slide, Jeremy? Or
no, that should be good.
Cool. So like I was saying, here are some of the programs that you might be familiar with, or that you would be familiar with if you were going to go into this UX design world. If you have used CC, you've probably heard of XD or seen it, in your library somewhere. That's Adobe's wireframing program. I'm a big fan of Figma, which is this little black F over here. That's kind of one of the new up and coming programs in this, or I don't know how old it is actually, but it's gaining a lot of popularity recently. And there's some other ones like InVision. I know at Ithaca we used Canva a lot. I wasn't a fan of it, but some people like it. And what's cool about a lot of these is that they're all mostly free, which is really nice. Like a lot of them have like pro versions, but I know Figma, I just used a free version. XD is apparently free. You don't need a CC subscription for that. So there's a lot of cool stuff. And you can just get involved in these programs pretty quickly. And if you need a vector art program and don't want to do any UX design, most of these you can also just use as that. So if you don't want to pay for Illustrator, Figma's pretty much as good. And a lot of these are very comparable.
Yeah.
So these are some.
To continue that idea, user experience. Thank you, Shannon. That's the idea for what UX represents. One of the smaller icons here, there's this little circle with a smile in it. This is called balsamic. This is very popular in the UXD design world. User experience designers always are using this balsamic thing because it uses raster graphics that are really rough, and you can just, it has a library of things and you drag and drop and you build your interfaces really quickly. It looks like it's really, really poorly designed, but the intention is that you're supposed to get better feedback from people because it doesn't have the finished, polished, clean lines that you would expect in most of these other vector programs. I believe it's one of the only ones that I know of that is specifically designed with this intention in mind. Most of the other ones are vector based. So that little circle with the smiley face, that's balsamic, spelled with a Q.
Yeah, that one was interesting looking. Oh yeah, we did not go over what UX and UI means. I just saw that in the chat. So just those are just they're pretty much used in conjunction. It means user experience and user interaction, and it's just talking about like the experience of a user and the interactions that they form. So this is a little look at Figma. So what's cool about a lot of these programs is you can make things that look like they have like code behind them, but actually don't. So you don't need to do any programming, but you can kind of make things interactive to show off how a program could theoretically work. But we'll get more into this later. So we have an activity that we're gonna do. You're all gonna help us. It's gonna be super fun. We're gonna introduce it now. So we're gonna design a relatively simple little app in one of these programs. We're gonna do designing like a shopping feed. So something that you guys are probably familiar with, whether you use like Amazon or other retailers. But we're gonna design 2 of these for different personas. But what is a persona? might look something like this.
And
so yeah.
with personas, there are lots of different information. Like we had said, there's going to be tons of information that you're going to generate from your user research. You're going to have information about who they are, how old they are, where they live, what kind of socioeconomic status are they. There's going to be a whole range of information, and you're going to want to try to synthesize that into some document that you can share with the rest of your team. So there's a couple of rules when it comes to persona building. And the personas that we build, there are characters. They're going to be the people that we design for. So you're not going to want to use silly names for your persona. Try to avoid famous names or people that you've heard of before, because that'll bring and conjure up these ideas of people that are not the actual persona of who you're building. So these are going to be made up names, made up people that synthesize all of these other pieces. So you'll include a name, a location, maybe the things that they're interested in. You might have their employment, their position, how much money they make, maybe some background. Oftentimes there's usually a personal quote to go with a user. Ethan, if you want to go to the next slide, I think some of these are kind of shown in that next one.
Yep. Yes, these are some like professional ones that are designed by actual like companies.
So you'll see like objectives and goals, what do they want from the world. You'll see things like the problems, the frustrations, the things that they have limitations with. You might have their orientation on certain topics or their perspective, their own questions, their morals. There may be some content preferences in terms of what channels or what ways they like to be communicated with. What kind of consumption habits do they follow? Are there certain keywords that go with this character? So this is one example. There's another example here with Brandy.
Yeah, this one has some actual text in it, so you can see kind of like what sort of words would be used and kind of like the descriptive language. And this is, not that this is their only function, but this is someone's job at a company. They create these things to try and, help the designers design with intention rather than just designing for how they think the app should look or work or feel. Because, as much as we think that we like really like know what we want our products to be, we're kind of designing for ourselves whenever we design things. So it's good to have an imaginary person in mind.
And a quick question: so the names are obviously informed by the research, and so are there tools to generate names that align with demographics, target audiences, that sort of thing?
It's a great question. I'm sure there are. I don't know of a specific link that I can send you immediately.
Okay.
My thinking about it is that you probably will learn enough about this group that you can probably pick a name out of a hat and be like, yeah, that's the name that fits for this character.
Totally.
Yeah, and so like Ethan was saying, you are not the user. And so whenever we're designing, often our presumption is to design for ourselves. What do we want? What is it that we want? And this is the really important part. This is the key difference about a user experience designer, is that they are able to jump into someone else's shoes and represent what that other person would want. That's what this user research helps us to do.
Yeah. So, and if someone ever finds one of those tools, let me know, because I'm the worst at picking names. I always accidentally want to use like friends' actual names and stuff, and it's not what you're supposed to do. So we made some personas, kind of simplified versions, because these can get pretty encompassing, and we don't have time to necessarily design for an in-depth human persona. So this is our first one. This is Elio. He is a financial analyst, and he just wants to get the stuff he wants. He doesn't want to spend a bunch of time comparing prices. That doesn't really matter for him because he has a nice Wall Street job. So he wants a tool that he can use to just buy things quickly and not have to worry about it too much. And he's not terribly tech savvy. So these are some things to keep in mind. If you're designing for Elio, he wants something that's intuitive. He wants something that works well. And he's not necessarily too concerned about, price and things like that. So if you're designing a shopping app for him, those are certain things that you'd want to think about. And on the flip side of that, we have another persona, Jennifer, who is very tech savvy. She's very good with computers and parts and working with interfaces. But she's a student. So she wants to save money and she doesn't want to spend a lot. So she's looking for good ways to get good deals on computer parts. And she's going to want an app that can help her with that. So these are two completely different use cases. And they will really form different designs and different app interfaces. So that's why it's important to know, are you marketing towards an Elio or are you marketing towards a Jennifer? So these are the ones that we're gonna take a look at. Yeah, so we're gonna split into groups and we are going to...
There's two people who just joined. Can you briefly explain quickly, like one more time, what we're doing before I
Yes.
have everyone off in the breakout rooms?
Yeah, so we're gonna design, and the way this will work is we'll just share our screens, and if you guys don't know, you can like annotate screen shares on Zoom, because I just found out about this yesterday. And we're gonna design two different apps. I think you're Elio, and I'm gonna take Jennifer. And yeah, we're gonna try and design different screens for these respective personas.
Cool. Okay, how much time did you want in the room? I forget. 10 minutes? 15?
What are we at? It's 8:30.
Probably 15, yeah.
15 should be good.
Cool. So I will send you there now.
Okay,
And then,
I'm gonna stop this screen share.
reminder for you guys if you want to record in your own rooms. Okay, bye. I think Ethan's group should go first.
What does that mean?
The classic chain of laugh.
Muted.
Ethan, mute it.
I know, I realized.
Are you trying to finish it?
A little bit.
Without your group's input?
Yeah, their great input that really helped me make the app. Okay, yeah, let me show you all what we did.
Hey, there's my, that was my sarcasm in his voice. So, just so you know, Ethan's the one that said, I did this other one in 15 minutes. So that's what it's going to take me.
Yeah, and I did. Look at this. So we have this great app for people to use to find their tech stuff. It's called techgetter.gov. In the future, when one of the candidates wins and they realize that we all need to get our tech stuff fast and quick, they hire me and my illustrious team to design this app in 15 minutes and get it out to the American people. So you can see there's a lot of features like placeholder text on these cards, but you could imagine that these might be different, like shopping things. And then this is the real, like the most valuable feature. You can filter stuff. So imagine you're, searching around for some CPUs or whatever people need. And you click on this filter and then you go to like the filter page and you can filter stuff. That's what we came up with. I know you all want to invest super heavily. Oh, look, and you can go back. Pretty cool. So I know you want to invest very heavily. Please send your, millions to my agent.
When you go public,
we'll get this app made.
Can you remind us what Jennifer, her persona was?
She was like the frugal-minded one, who wanted to, she was a student, so she didn't have a lot of disposable income, and she wanted to be able to, she wanted to be able to compare items and be able to figure out like what's the best deal. So that's why we implemented this filter function so that she can go here and, have like, you could have like a compare page of different products, or maybe have different like spec sheets or something like that. That's what we got.
I find compelling in the filter page, because usually a filter page is like a series of like radio buttons, or like things you're clicking on, but more like a plain text, like where a person can basically type in and just filter like based on like a some sort of parsed plain text. Could be interesting.
Yeah, thought you were gonna make fun of my plain text page
No,
here, but yeah, no, yeah, cool. You want to see what Jeremy's looks like now?
Okay. So we're gonna play a game here too. So I'm gonna share my screen. That's what I'm gonna do.
I came in late. I didn't get to acknowledge your name tag. Thank you for wearing one, Jeremy.
Oh my God!
Just in case. So what we have is this is an interface designed for your computer. We have our buddy here, Elio, who has decided that he just needs a specific user to help him out. So he's got a butler here in the bottom corner, and this butler is ready to help. So all you have to do is search by voice and just talk through what he wants, and it will automatically choose the specific item that he's looking for, and he can either click purchase, or he can click try again, and he'll get a different version of the same exact stuff. And so this will be this kind of back and forth where he can click on these buttons to continue trying for different things. So the idea here is simplicity and expertise provided by an assistant. And in 15 minutes, we're able to drag and drop a couple of things in here.
Wow.
Bravo.
I like those red shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make that little butler man?
No, I drag and drop him from a library of support. This is there's a tool called Undraw. Undraw is a set of illustrations put together by Katerina Linton-Sani, and she's been making all of these really fabulous things. In fact, if I share this other element, give me a second. But she's been doing all sorts of really fascinating and awesome illustrations work, and all of this is all vector graphics that are open source and free to use in any illustration without attribution. So if you're looking to do any kind of really cool stuff, she's put together a lot of this, and it's an instant plugin for this device, or for this this tool. So things like that.
Does anyone have any questions or want to see other stuff?
What program
I can-
do you use, Jeremy?
I can redeem myself and show actual like things that I've spent time on.
So this program, to answer your question, Nick, this is Adobe XD. It's the Experience Designer from Adobe. It's a free service. I no longer have an Adobe account. I just have my base free accounts since I'm no longer a student. So, or I guess since I'm a PhD student, I still have student support, but I don't pay for the Adobe stuff because I don't do that anymore. I do research. But yeah,
Good for you. Good for you. You're not under Adobe's foot anymore.
It is nice and freeing.
Yeah, I wish I was there.
Although I do feel like that work is a little easier. Anyways,
so if you actually spend some time learning about UX and not just like an hour-long lecture where you fumble through it, you can make something that looks a little bit more like an actual app. So this is something that I've been doing for work. Let's see. So basically this is like a hanging out app, and they didn't have a screen for events, so they had me design one. So you just kind of like what the feed page looks like, and you can see how all of these buttons like actually will do things, and take you to different parts of this app. and you get a kind of a feel for how it works and how it would look, and what these interactions look like before you actually go in and program it.
Yeah, and you can also share a link to these interactive like bits, and you can send them to somebody else and have them give you feedback. You can even do it over Zoom and do like a live chat and give somebody a think aloud of like, oh, well, I would imagine that this button would do this, or this thing would do that thing. So that's another really nice benefit of these programs being free. And often many of them just run in the browser too. So you can just send them a link and they just kind of click through things in the browser. One other thing that I'd like to share with everybody, this video is a little on the older side, but IDEO, which is IDEO.org, they do a lot of really interesting design work. And this was a 15-minute process. It's a documentary, more or less, that goes through how they redesigned the shopping cart for going out into the real world. So this takes us out of the digital world. This is like a physical shopping cart that needs to be redesigned, and it goes through the whole process of user research, figuring out what people need, the designing, prototyping, and all the way through the design flow. It's a really excellent documentary that highlights all of the stages of a design process.
I think that like segues like nicely into my question, which is what sort of I'm sure that this is used, this design principles are used extensively across many industries, but could you kind of like maybe point to some maybe unexpected uses of user interaction, user experience?
Unexpected, that's a good question. I mean,
Well, today we talked, yeah.
I've got an
Here,
idea.
you can go, Jeremy.
So when I was presenting my project, since I'm so close to Disney World, we actually had a representative from Disney come and visit and talk to us. And he's one of the lead UX designers for the experience of waiting online. And the places where you would imagine this doesn't have anything to do with it, where like your experience, it's still an experience sitting on that line waiting for your ride. How are the ways, what ways and how often and what kind of things are people looking for to keep them engaged and stuff at Disney? Like that kind of stuff. I was like, wow, there are designers that even do that. But another example is Avid, for example. Like Avid is a media composer that was built for the filmmaker, that was working with actual cellophane and like cutting and splicing and stuff. And so that's why a lot of the nomenclature and the choices of how they put the menus together were built for those users, because that's what the users knew.
Yeah, like today we talked a lot about like the digital aspect of this, because at least that's what I do, and kind of what Jeremy's also studied, and what I think a lot of like people who are interested in post can really easily transition to working on like digital interfaces, because it's very similar skills and products, but it's not necessarily a digital thing. Like you can have users experiencing, like Jeremy said, experiencing places and experiencing physical products. So if you're not super into designing websites, but you still think that this is interesting and cool, there's also people who design like the user experience of a product, and like how does like like when you have like, I don't know, like headphones and you open this thing up, like how does this look, how is this cool, how does it feel in your hand, stuff like that. You're not going to be using big, but I'm sure the physical design world also has their own tools and stuff that they use for that, where they just like sketch it on paper. So it's involved in a lot of different ways, and you can like do user experience in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That's the nice thing of 3D printing and virtual reality and all these other tools. You can get to prototyping really, really fast and start designing things, because everything we touch, everything that exists that is not nature made, I mean, somebody's had to design it. So there's an experience involved with that.
There's nice overlaps into like product and packaging design, industrial design. It's like, it all kind of, this weaves through it. The experience of those things is important, kind of central to their design. It's cool.
Yeah, for sure. I should post my email in here at least. You can also reach me on Slack if anybody wants to chat some more, or if you have other questions, feel free to ask now.
I didn't create it, but it exists. Oof, that's okay. Let me try. It runs really poorly normally.
Maybe
So maybe I'll just pop a link. Yeah. But this is a cool thing that the New York Times did, like right after the last year's election. They made this like, and this is something that like if you were like an interactive designer, you might make, and this, it has a lot of special user design, like user experience considered. This site, I mean, maybe it's just my computer, but like it really like takes a hot minute to load. But you can like look at like every single like individual county and see like how they voted, or not even county, like every like district, I guess. I just put it in the Zoom chat, and you can zoom in and see like the exact percentages of like how they swinged in 2016. And it's actually cool, like it can tell you like if you lived here, you are a 40-minute drive away from someone who from the next like Trump leaning district, or like the next like Hillary leaning district. So that's a really cool little interactive design thing. I'd imagine they're going to make another one for this election.
Yeah. And to kind of rope it into what we do in my lab, actually, we work on visualizations for explainable artificial intelligence as another asset of things that we do. So we're trying to find ways to visually represent how a machine will make these decisions. This decision is a voting decision where it's yes, no for different candidates. But when you're dealing with like an image classifier and you give it an image and you're like, hey, how does it know that there's a cat in this image? We try to find ways to visualize that. So these are other ways that you can think about visualization and other ways you can get involved with research if that's something that's interesting to you.
But Ethan and wait, is Jeremy still here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there you are. What do you guys think of the Zoom UX?
We were talking about that because
I
Jeremy,
I just want to hear your opinions, like while we're all looking at it together.
I was like, Jeremy said to me today, he was like, maybe we should have them do like a video calling app instead of the shopping list. And I was not sure about that because I was like, I can't even think of what the UI looks like for Zoom off the top of my head. I mean, I don't use it too often compared to like everyone who's in school right now probably uses it a lot more than me. But I mean, like, I feel like it's just like they're so like they're just like, I mean, like I don't think about it, so it's good. Like that's definitely like a starter. But they're so minimal that I wasn't sure if that would be good for the demo, but maybe it would have been. But yeah, I don't know. You have thoughts, Jeremy?
Oh yeah, I've got lots of thoughts about Zoom. If I were to redesign Zoom, what I've seen is that there is actually, I'm trying to pull up the link to it. There's someone who has redesigned Zoom for classrooms specifically, where they take the lecturer and they put them off in a corner so that they're separated from the rest of the class and can actually stand on a pedestal and have everyone's attention all at once, so they're not lost in the grid. There's ideas where you have all the heads, like just profile pictures, floating around in a 2D plane, and you can circle them and they're instantly in their own group where they can talk to each other. Like things that are just easier to do. You can have like, you can set up a group of people and be like, this is a team project, so let's bring them to the front of the classroom, and they all get displayed. So when you have large classrooms and you lose those people and they're all talking from different parts, they all have the same control over the same central presentation tool. Like there's a lot of other tools that have made it better. And then, there's other ways to communicate with each other too. There's a tool that I've been using for some of my conferences that I've gone to, where they put you on, it's almost like you're playing Pokemon on a 2D plane, and you're like walking around, and you can walk up to people and you instantly get their video feed. As you get closer to them, you get a better view of them.
That's the thing. Speaking of like the magician thing, I went to a virtual magic convention a few weeks ago, and they built a whole 2D world, and everyone had like an avatar, and you walked around, and when you walked up to someone, their like video faded into view, and then they had like full on lectures and stuff that they just hosted in Zoom. But it's like, yeah, they had flawless back and forth, and it's like a really crazy thing that a lot of big like magic societies now are planning on doing that even after COVID, just because it's a lot easier and a lot more cost effective, and you can get most of the same information.
That's really cool. Yeah, no, it is definitely really worth it. Because I mean, using OBS and trying to do a broadcast to YouTube or something like that, and having it, just broadcast to the world, and so anybody can watch it. We're stuck in the Stone Ages. Like, let's get into this new technology. Let's do some more interactive design and try to rethink how we do these conferences online. There's lots of ways to make it change.
That's one of the things is like Zoom is made with like a very generic persona in mind, because they want, I don't know what it originally started out as, but they wanted it to be like basically replace Skype, which was like the generic video chatting tool
We used
Um,
Zoom in the office. So it was like an office with
like prior to COVID.
yeah, like for multiple locations of a global
Yeah.
office.
It was like a one size fits all solution to video conferencing, which is fine. Like that's like there's spots for that. But now that it's so like ubiquitous in society nowadays, it might be worthwhile to think of like apps that have more specific functions rather than just like only use Zoom, you know.
Let's say I'm still confused at how Zoom became the one. Like when we all decided that we had to like be home and conference like this. It's weird that we all chose one that most people had never used before.
I know Zoom was already integrated with Ithaca.
Oh, was it?
It was
Okay.
it was part of our Sakai page. I didn't have any classes prior to COVID that used it, but I knew people who had to use Zoom to do online stuff before. So I'm wondering if that's why. I'm wondering if a lot of schools did that. And then
I think a lot of enterprises had it already.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of why like it just became the thing that like when everyone was like, oh, we need to do this right now. We already have like, you know, licenses for like the schools to use this. No time to find a better tool. Let's just use this one now.
I'm also going to take the time to plug my company's virtual meeting
that's
platform.
complete speculation, but I think that's the case.
I'm going to plug Pando, my company's virtual meeting platform.
Oh yeah, like did they have like a specialization over Zoom, or is it just like an alternative?
It's like there's one or two speakers in a room and they have a giant wall full of people, but it's virtual people, and it's like you're at an event, and so you can see everyone and everyone can see you at all times, and like you interact with each other. The sizzle is very nice. I did not edit it, but check it out.
Nice.
If you have time. It's pretty cool.
Clever. Really, really nice. Yeah, I think to answer
this is
your
an
question,
interesting button design on the website, but
yeah.
Yeah, my thinking is that it had a more rich feature set than Skype. There was breakout rooms, there were some other elements to it too, and then all the different contracts that they had with so many different enterprise that probably made a big difference.
That's super fair.
Adoption.
Yeah. I'm glad it wasn't Skype.
Yeah, I think people in general like were not a fan of Skype. Like even before COVID, it was starting to fall out. I'm surprised Discord didn't become like the one though. I guess Discord's a little unprofessional for
gaming
work and stuff.
Yeah, I think all Shannon's classes were in Discord last semester.
But that was before we had video.
Yeah, there was a conference that we attended in Discord, and somebody had their mic on, and we were all standing in like an audio channel together, and like their family kept interrupting, and so we were all listening to them, but they didn't have their speakers on, and so like it was just this really awkward moment. But yeah, every tool is designed for a specific group of users. There's a persona in mind, even if it's a generic persona. I mean, any more specific you get, the more design time and the more expense it's going to end up costing, because you're designing for a very specific audience, and if that niche doesn't latch on and you don't get your design right, that's a lot of time. So research is super important in this area.
Definitely.
Anyone have any last question?
No questions, but stay safe.
Yeah, big thanks, Ethan and Jeremy.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Sure, happy to help. It's good to see everybody's smiling faces.
Yeah, no problem.
Nice to see you too, man.
Cool.
Did you guys actually record in the breakout?
No.
No, but you didn't want to see that.
It was a safe space.
Oh, I did. For the other group, I literally like spent 6 minutes in Jeremy's room, and he had like something fully designed already with a butler, and then go into Ethan's room and he's got a blank page.
It wasn't a competition.
It was.
They were definitely not competitions, not at all. No, we were designing for different use cases.
Yeah. That's true.
Jeremy.
You did win.
but you did win. Sorry.
I definitely didn't consider that there were so many things on my screen that weren't Figma, that I like the zoom overlay messed up my workflow.
But Jeremy also had like quadrants up so that, I don't know, I thought it was easy. You could see like, here's the persona, here's our workspace, here's where we're grabbing the icons and stuff. And so it was like,
Good information architecture.
Yeah.
It's not like I studied
should've
this
done
stuff anyways.
Yeah, right.
but that might have helped that he got a lot more participation because it was all visible. Ethan
Yeah.
had a very silent room.
Oopsie.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
I have a 13-inch screen also. So there wasn't a lot to work with.
That's fair.